Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January 14th, 2026 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format today. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment, and those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling in to one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials page of the City of Eugene website. In case of a medical emergency, an automated external defibrillator, an AED, is located on the counter behind staff on the left side or the west side of this room. And in case of an emergency evacuation, emergency exits are through the double doors located at the back of the room, and the doors to the patio can also be used as needed. Thank you all again for joining us today. I now call the January 14th, 2026 work session of the Eugene City Council to order. And I will turn it over to the Assistant City Manager to introduce our first topic.
Thank you, Mayor. So today we have the opportunity to share information from polling on the 3 library levy options that you've been considering over the past couple months. We have Josh Bates, our Library, Recreation, and Cultural Services Director, and Angela Okanya, our Library Director, here to kick off the conversation.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. It is wonderful to be back here with all of you today. For the record, I am Joshua Bates, and I'm the Executive Director of Library, Recreation, and Cultural Services. So at our last meeting on October 27th, we shared 3 concepts for a potential library levy and outlined our plan to test those concepts through polling through DHM research. That polling is now completed, so we are back here before all of you. So today, Angela and I will review the timeline for the levy process, identify key decision points, and present the final levy options and associated costs. Following that part of the presentation, DHM Research will share the results of the November 2025 library levy polling and answer any questions you may have. After that discussion, Council can choose to take action. All right, so here is the timeline. We are nearing the conclusion of this process. In September, we revisited the framework with Council. In October, we discussed the 3 different concepts. Now, throughout November, DHM facilitated polling, and today, once again, we are presenting DHM Research's findings. DHM is a trusted Oregon-based firm with extensive experience in municipal polling. They conducted the Parks and Recreation polling that informed the city's successful levy and bond measures, and have a long history of working with local governments across this state. Council may decide to take action today. If Council would like additional discussion or refinement, we will return on January 28th for further Council action if needed. Early February is the last time for Council to act in order to place the library levy on the May ballot, given statutory deadlines and the administrative steps required for ballot preparation. With that, I'll hand it over to our Library Director, Angela Okanya, who will walk through the 3 levy options and associated costs.
Thank you, Joshua. Today, I will share those 3 final options for sustaining and expanding library services, each designed to balance community needs with fiscal responsibility. Option 1, maintain. This option preserves the library's current level of service while advancing community priorities of access, equity, and safety. It ensures stability amid growing demand and maintains what Eugene residents consistently say they value: open hours, high-quality collections, and access to technology. Libraries are essential for navigating an increasingly digital world, and this option sustains programming that bridges the digital divide, provides trusted information, and creates safe, welcoming spaces for all. It also positions the library to plan for future growth through a comprehensive systems study. The key components include 160 hours across 3 locations, diverse, high-quality collections that reflect community interests and needs, digital equity initiatives, including device lending and digital literacy programs, enhanced building safety and accessibility for all patrons, and development of a library systems plan to guide long-term improvements. This levy option has an average tax rate of 15 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, which would cost each home approximately $43 per year and support an average annual service level of $3.3 million. Option 2, maintain library levy services and expand early childhood literacy programs. Option 2 builds on the foundation of option 1 by investing in early literacy, one of the most effective and equitable strategies for long-term community success. Research shows that children who participate in early literacy programs before kindergarten are 4 times more likely to read proficiently by 3rd grade, a critical predictor of academic achievement and economic stability. Access to affordable childcare and early learning opportunities. This option responds to that need by bringing learning to families where they are, as well as inside the library walls and through partnerships with preschools, daycares, and community organizations. Key features include adding an early literacy librarian to coordinate programs and measure outcomes. It reinstates the Storytime to Go program, which would send trained volunteers into preschools, daycares, it strengthens the youth collection for ages 0 to 5, and it deepens partnerships with schools and family-serving organizations, expanding story times and early literacy programs. This investment helps ease pressures on families, provides high-quality early learning experiences, and strengthens community belonging by ensuring every child has the tools to read, learn, and thrive. This levy option has an average tax rate of 17 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, which would cost the average home approximately $49 per year and support an average annual service level of $3.6 million. Option 3, maintain library levy services, expand early childhood literacy programs, and expand book drop-off and pickup locations. Option 3 expands access through book vending kiosks and return units in underserved neighborhoods such as West Eugene and River Road, as well as South Eugene areas more than 10 minutes from a branch or limited by transit access. These kiosks allow residents to borrow, return, and pick up reserved materials at their convenience, integrating seamlessly with the library's catalog and circulation systems. This approach reflects a national best practice identified by the American Library Association and implemented successfully in other cities. For example, San Bernardino County Library reported kiosks accounted for 8% of total circulation, but at only 2% of the operating cost, demonstrating a cost-effective way to expand reach without building new facilities. Key features include deploying kiosks and return units in West Eugene and River Road, installing a kiosk in South Eugene, complementing the existing pilot return bin, commissioning a systems study to evaluate future kiosk sites and micro-facility planning, as well as beginning the planning phase for the downtown library's 4th floor to support its long-term growth. This option combines innovation with fiscal responsibility, extending library access today while gathering the data to guide Eugene's next generation of library services. This levy option has an average tax rate of 19 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, which would cost the average home approximately $56 per year and support an average annual service level of $4 million. Next, we'll hear from DHM Research, our polling partner, who will join us virtually to share what Eugene residents told us about these levy options. We ask that you hold questions until they have completed their presentation.
Okay, Angela, would you like us to get started?
Yes, please, Tony.
Oh, okay. Mayor and councilors, thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to partner with you and to engage with members of your community on this very important survey research. As mentioned, my name is Tony Iaccarino. I'm a senior research manager at DHM Research, and I'm joined by John Horvick, senior vice president at DHM, and Lane Cooper, a research assistant at DHM, who also helped work on this project. DHM Research is a nonpartisan, policy-oriented public opinion research firm. We're based in Oregon. We've been conducting opinion research on issues that matter to Pacific Northwest communities, including Eugene, for 40 plus years. We've got a 20-minute presentation for you, which is an abridged and high-level version of a larger report complete with detailed analysis of survey findings by demographic group and ward. I believe you have copies of that report. We'd like, as mentioned, we'd like to ask you to hold questions until the end of the 20-minute presentation. John and I will then be happy to answer any and all questions. Finally, we understand at DHM that the survey findings here are just one element of a larger research, planning, budgeting effort, engagement effort, and that you're considering all of these elements as you decide whether to refer a library levy to the ballot, and if so, which of the 1, 2, or 3 options. So with that said,
Excuse me, Tony, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're having a
Yes.
little bit of connection issues in regards to your presentation. So we're going to have Angela actually walk through your slides. So if you could let her know, she'll advance them as you're going through it, okay?
Sure.
One moment, please. I believe that the issue is Metro. Yeah, it's not Tony's issue. So do you have it?
Okay. Well, I'm also just happy to share my screen. If
Oh, no,
it
let's
helps.
have you try to share your screen. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay.
We're able to
Any-
see your screen.
Okay, you can all see that. And please interrupt me at any time if there are audio issues or connection issues. Please don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay. So the purpose of this survey, more generally, was to evaluate quality of life and key issues for Eugene voters and assess their satisfaction with key public services. And then much more specifically was to gauge support for several potential library levy options and to identify the strongest reasons for and against. Now, in order to do this, we employed a mixed mode survey of 400 Eugene voters, half of whom received a phone call and who spoke with a live interviewer, half of whom received a text message inviting them to participate in a survey online. Now, we typically employ these mixed mode approaches because we know voters have different preferences for how they'd like to engage. Some prefer speaking to interviewers on the phone, some prefer responding to surveys online. We wanted to be attentive to the diversity of those preferences. Something about who we spoke with. We want to underscore that this was a representative survey, not of Eugene voters in general, but more specifically of likely May 2026 Eugene voters. We know, based on historical evidence and our own experience with election modelings, that May primary voters are different than general election voters. They tend to be more partisan, and so you have less non-affiliated voters. They tend to be older, so you have fewer younger voters. They tend to be higher income and have higher levels of education. And so our sample is a representative sample of those voters by age, gender, race, party, education level, and ward. The results here have a margin of error of plus or minus 4.9%. Okay. So what did we find? First, some good news we'd like to share. About 7 in 10 Eugene voters say they're satisfied with their quality of life. That's up from about 6 in 10 since the last time we did this survey, a similar survey back in 2022. So growing satisfaction with quality of life over the last few years. We then asked voters an entirely open-ended question with no pre-filled response categories. The question was, what's the most important issue you'd like the city of Eugene to do something about? Now, after collecting 400 verbatim responses to this question, we then coded them into shorthand categories for analytical purposes. There's a number of really interesting findings from the responses here. First, as you can see, most often mentioned as the most important issue they'd like the city to address: homelessness, housing costs, crime, public safety. That's pretty evident from the percentages in blue there. Now, one thing to point out about homelessness, although mentions of homelessness are high, there is some good news here. The last time we asked this question back in 2022, in Eugene, 51% mentioned homelessness. So there's been a 10-point drop of mentions, and that's a sign that voters are seeing at least some progress on that particular issue. Now, regarding housing costs, concerns about housing costs, a levy does add to overall housing costs, so it's a concern. That's certainly worth taking into consideration as we review some of these other findings. Concerns about public safety. As you know, all the levy options do provide some additional funds for public safety at the downtown branch. So all three levy options are speaking to that particular concern. Finally, one last thing to say about the open ends here. Note that libraries were not mentioned as among the most important issues they want the city to address. Now, that doesn't mean libraries are not an unimportant issue, but the finding does reinforce a later finding in the survey, which is one that tested reasons against the levy, and that is that, libraries are not necessarily the top priority for voters. And so some voters have concerns about a potential levy. Okay. When we ask about satisfaction with services, we see that satisfaction with library services is high, second only to fire and rescue services and parks. We think a big takeaway here is the fact that Eugene voters are obviously, they're happy, satisfied with library services. And it's not a big stretch to say that they want to maintain that high level of service, which is something that a library levy will help provide. When it comes to library use, about 6 in 10 voters say they've used the library services in the past year, with nearly 3 in 10 using them at least a monthly or more. And now for the real focus of the survey. And I'm going to stop here just for a second to make sure that everybody can hear me well and we don't have any technical hiccups. Any concerns?
Good.
Okay, terrific. As Angela and Josh mentioned, there are 3 levy options that we tested. Option number 1, the lowest cost option, is really about maintaining the current level of levy funded services. 2, option 2, slightly higher cost, builds upon everything in option 1 and also expands early childhood programs, literacy programs. Option 3, the highest cost levy, builds upon everything in 1 and 2 and also expands services to include expanded book pickup and drop-off options. Now, let's take a look first at how voters responded to option 1. I should say, for all 3 options, we tested the options in 2 different ways. First, simply by offering them a ballot title and nothing else. And this ballot title is here modeled on a previous ballot question language that have been used in previous Eugene levies. But we do it this way because we know that some voters aren't going to read the summary. They're not going to do research. They may simply just make their decision based on a simple question. So we ask the question, and we see that we got 63% support. Now, providing them with some additional information, the basic information about what the levy would provide, that it would maintain the current level of library services, maintain services including hours, collections, digital access, all 3 branches, increase security at the downtown branch, and that it would cost the average household an average of $43 a year. Support goes up 6 points to 69% support. Now, this is really important. DHM, we often provide our clients with a general rule of thumb for evaluating potential ballot measures. And here it goes. If the proposed levy has a minimum of 60% informed support, with half of that support certain support as opposed to somewhat support, and in the absence of an organized opposition campaign, we find, although there's obviously no guarantee, that such measures have tended to pass. And you have met this threshold for option 1. Now let's take a look at option 2. A somewhat smaller majority of voters support option 2, 55%, again, with nothing but a ballot question. Provide them with additional information, that it will expand early childhood literacy programs and cost the average household about $49 a year. Support goes up 7 points to 62%, with 40% of that support certain, well more than half. So here too, you've met that threshold for ballot measures that tend to pass. Now let's take a look at option 3. Again, in that initial test with nothing but a ballot question, you've got slightly less than majority support, 47%. Provide them with a little bit more information, that it would do everything that options 1 and 2 do, but also expand book pickup and drop-off locations and cost the average Eugene household about $56 a year. Support grows by 4 points to 51%. Now, obviously, that does not meet the threshold, that 60% threshold, which we think is a safer one when it comes to a greater likelihood of a measure passing. All right. One of the other things we did in the survey was to ask voters about possible reasons that they might support or oppose the levies. As you can see here, voters find all the reasons to support options 1 and 2 compelling, with reasons to support option 3 less so. So for option 1, we tested various arguments that that the library would prevent levy-funded service cuts. It would maintain hours, maintain digital access, improve safety, maintain collections. These are just shorthand descriptions of more elaborate sentences that we posed to voters, but we're providing the shorthand here. And as you can see, for all of the reasons to potentially support option 1, you have pretty robust, solid majorities of 60% or more saying, hey, these are good reasons to support the levy. For option 2, you also got robust majorities, strong majorities saying, expanding story time and early learning programs and increasing youth collections. Yeah, these are really good reasons to support the levy. For option 3, expanded book pickup and drop-off locations, you've got less than a majority of voters saying this is a good reason this is a good reason to support the levy. So when you take these 2 major pieces of evidence together, the fact that option 1 and option 2 both have north of 60% support, and secondly, that both options 1 and 2, for both options 1 and 2, voters think the reasons behind them are good reasons to support. It follows that either 2 of these proposals, if referred to voters, again, we're not in the prediction business per se, and we can't guarantee results. But again, measures that have this kind of support tend to do well. And we also tested a few reasons why people might oppose the levies. And we see that a couple of the arguments that it's really not a top priority, that it's going to, add to housing costs, and it's going to make, Eugene less affordable, that, more than a majority of voters do find these good reasons to oppose. Now, this is not to say that 59% or 56% of voters oppose the levy because it's not their top priority or that it might be unaffordable, but it does nevertheless indicate that a majority do at least have some concerns, and that those concerns are sufficient consideration when thinking about which levy to potentially put before voters. Okay, and now we come to the final slide. We conducted a head-to-head test. We asked voters, after learning all this information, which of the following options would you prefer? Option 1, option 2, option 3, none of these, or you still just don't know. Now, of the various options, a plurality, 29%, favors option 3. So, how to interpret these results? Now, we feel strongly that it's less that option 3 has the most support citywide, but rather that you have a die-hard group of library supporters out there. nearly 30%, who will likely support libraries no matter what. And that's wonderful. But it's likely not enough support for option 3 to carry the day. Those who prefer option 3 are highly likely to lend their support to options 1 and 2. But we're far less certain that those who prefer option 1 and 2 would lend their support to option 3. So just a note of caution here, and some of our thoughts on how to interpret this particular finding. Okay, so that's all we have for you. And John and I are happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much for all of that, Tony. So prior to hopping into questions, I want to make sure that we review the 3 options that are before council today. The first is move to direct, and these are the different motions that are on the table. The first one is to move to direct the city manager to return to council on January 28th with a resolution referring to the May 19th, 2026 ballot, a library levy measure consistent with option 1 as described in the AIS. The second one is to move to direct the city manager to return to council on January 28th with a resolution referring to the May 19th, 2026 ballot, a library levy measure consistent with option 2 as described in the AIS. And the third is to move to direct the city manager to return to council on January 28th with a resolution referring to the May 19th, 2026 ballot, a library levy measure consistent with option 3 as described in the AIS. And with that, are there any questions for either us or DHM?
Thank you, staff. Thank you also to our team remotely for that presentation. I'll now open the floor for council discussion. I have Councilor Evans and then Councilor Zelenka and Councilor Groves in the queue.
So was there a breakdown on or disaggregated by ward in terms of the analysis that's been presented? So do we know, what people in Ward 1 favor versus people in Ward 6 or Ward 5?
Yeah, yes, Councilor Evans, there was a disaggregation of the different wards. That was in the larger report that we sent over last night. And then also, if DHM, do you have that information available in front of you? Because if there is any follow-up questions around that, they can answer that succinctly.
So can we get a quick breakdown of that? Because I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yes.
I would be happy to share that with you. Yes, we broke things down by demographic groups and by party affiliation and also by ward. And if you bear with me for, it looks like there's potentially a delay between my.
While Tony is doing that, he's going to get it up in a second.
Okay.
We do have that. We have it in the report, and we'll show it here in a second. And we should also be humble about interpreting the results. The samples, we're starting with a sample size of 400. You divide that relatively evenly across 8 wards. So 400 divided by 8, the sample sizes get relatively small, but there's patterns in the results that we think are instructive.
Could you make this full screen?
Where is it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, it's over there, but it's not yet on our main screen.
Oh,
No, it's not on our main screen, so all right.
It was.
Well, it was not there now. But
26.
Are you, can you see that?
I can see it.
Okay, so this is the total vote yes, or those who support for option 1 by ward. And we see that for option 1, you have pretty strong majority support in every ward. You have majority support in Ward 6 as well, where support is lowest. but a majority of voters in all wards support option 1. Let's jump ahead to option 2. Again, you've got majority support in all wards, though in Ward 6, support begins to drop significantly. Option 3, you have support in 4 majority support in 5 wards, and slightly less than a majority in Ward 4 and 7, and significantly less support in Ward 6. We think that this slide is another reason why, option 3 has less chance of success than either option 2 or option 1.
Any additional questions, Counselor? Okay,
Nope, that helps a lot.
thank you. Counselor Zelenka.
Yes, thanks for the presentation and the data points. What was the percent in favor of the 2020 levy? 77%. Yeah. Can you describe in option 3, there's the vending kiosks. I think that's one of the coolest things that's happened in library sciences in a very long time. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what they are, do you remember red boxes, those video dispensers that were in all over the place? It's sort of akin to that, except for materials and especially books. So this means that essentially a person would be able to go to one of these kiosks to both drop off their materials, but also pick up materials. So they could pick up books, movies, all the different materials that we provide at the library actually in their neighborhoods. So initially this would be in 3 different locations, which would be River Road, which would be South Eugene, and then West Eugene.
Yeah, you put in a library card and you can get a book. Pay for it, it's free. Yeah, it's part of the service. Yeah, I think that's such a cool thing. I just wanted to point out that for the record, in the attachment, it says that I was a no vote on the 2020 levy, not because I didn't support the library levy. To the contrary, my no vote was because I felt the council was making a mistake by not going for a higher level of funding on the levy. Council decided to play it safe, and it turned out that I was correct, and the levy passed with 77% of the vote. And if I'm not mistaken, the polling actually showed that the polling was actually a lot lower than that, and we underestimated the support for library services. And I hope we'll take that into consideration this time around. And this presentation really seems like deja vu all over again. When we were in 2020, we did 3 options, and we ended up with increasing investment, similar polling results. And I know it's different this time, but I think that the library services are essential to our city, and people want to support it, and they want to pay for it. And we have only one shot at this every 5 years. So my intent is to maximize and get as much library services as we think voters will support. And to me, that's option 3, which adds one of the coolest ideas and most innovative things in libraries in a very long time, and that's the vending kiosks. They're the future of libraries, and we can put ourselves in catching up to vending kiosks, or at the forefront and invest in now, or we can be behind the 8 ball and catch up later. Option 3 only adds $56 per year. Most of that you're already paying right now. So it's a really good buy for the money. I believe voters will see it like that. And I noticed on slide 23 for the DHM guys, the question was about expanding book pickup and drop off, and it wasn't about vending kiosks. Did we test the vending kiosk support?
I do not believe that we tested vending kiosks explicitly in the polling. DHM, would you want to hop in?
No, we kept the language fairly simple, and just mentioned expanded book drop-off and pickup locations.
Do we know, Josh, what the added cost would be if we only added in the vending kiosk of option 3 and not the other stuff in option 2?
Yeah, the hard part with that is it's not just the cost of the kiosk itself,
Sure.
delivery of the service.
Yeah, it's a
as well as-
service.
Yeah, it's the entire thing. I would tell you, we built the packages with a lot of fiscal responsibility around that. But it provides for the staff and special collections that wouldn't take just from downtown, but would give those communities their own little robust amount, as well as supplementing from the downtown. So the kiosks themselves may be inexpensive, but to run the service.
Yeah, but I would suspect a lot of the return drop-offs around the city are probably the majority of this, though, of option 3 cost increase. So I'd like to see what if we just added the vending kiosk, what that would cost.
Thank you, Councilor Zelenka.
Angela, can you confirm your mic is on, and if so, pointed more at your face?
It's definitely not on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation, presentations, I should say. I'm curious about the 4.9% margin of error. That seems higher than most surveys I see. Is that because the sample size was smaller?
Tony, would you like to take that question?
I can take that, Tony, if you want. 4.9% margin of error is the margin of error for a sample size of 400 people. So we get this question a lot, just in case people are wondering and hasn't been asked directly. The margin of error is not dependent on the population size. So the margin of error is the same in 400 sample survey in Eugene as it would be in Cottage Grove, as it would be in Portland. I believe the work DHM has done for Eugene in the recent years has been 400. I could double check that, but I think that that's correct. And I would say that there is a practical limit to what is possible in a community the size of Eugene. The number of available contacts, what response rates are, trying to model it for a May primary, which is a smaller electorate than, say, all voters or general election. 400 is about what is practicable while still ensuring that the sample, the participants, are representative of the group of people that we want to talk to. So I think it's pretty consistent with what we've done in Eugene before, and the margin of error is reflective of the sample size.
Thank you very much. That was helpful hearing that explanation.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have as far as questions at this point.
We have Counselor Clark, and then Counselor Leach, and then Counselor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. Refresh my memory, current year, budget year 25, 26, levy dollar amount right now for this budget year is what, from the 2020 levy?
It's, let me get you the exact number.
Okay.
It's 2.85. Each
Okay.
year, the levy does build because of
Sure.
reserve. So it's probably 3 right now for this fiscal year.
And I'm gonna ask, I see Twyla sitting over here, so I want to ask a quick question. Revenue forecast, the last revenue forecast we had shows us off in future years. Do we still see that as off of previous planning in future years forecast?
Thank you, Councilor Clark. So Twyla Miller, your Chief Financial Officer. Do you mean our property tax revenue
Yes,
projection?
general
So-
fund revenues.
Yes. So our property tax revenue projections are lower than they were. We've reduced those assumptions based on information from the assessor.
Okay. Thank you very much. my question is, option 3 appears, and I'm uneducated about this in specifics, but it appears to add hardware costs for the kiosks themselves as well as the personnel. Is there additional staff cost with option number 2? Are you hiring new staff?
Correct. Option 2 does include an early literacy librarian and then temporary staff. So one city full-time employee and then temporary staff.
So here's my question. In next year's process of budgeting, if we had to cut general fund revenues to the library next year and in the next biennium, would these new services represent the first cuts, or would they not factor into, would the reason of what cuts you all would recommend if we had to cut, would that be on some other basis? Can you help me understand that?
Thank you very much for the question, Counselor Clark. If these, any of these services that would be funded through the levy would likely need to continue to be funded due to the, essentially the promise that we've made to our community by funding the levy. So each of these services would be held relatively harmless. That being said, if there was reductions that came up in the future around our general fund budget, what we would do is look at the entire system and figure out how we can maintain the best service, even in a reduced general fund allocation for the library. So those services would not be reduced. Other services would potentially be reduced.
I would say, as a point of clarity, when we built this new levy, we were understanding of general fund fluctuations. Option A already has 18.4 staff members in it from what we do to maintain services. Option B adds 1 additional. And how we've pivoted and made more efficient services with that is to balance guaranteeing the promises we've made to the community. And so we think that we will be able to navigate general fund reductions while keeping our levy promises.
Okay, that helps. I have made previous years' decisions based on what kind of promises we're making to the public with the levy that increases the amount of money we're asking for, while at the same time knowing or having a good guess that we're gonna have to turn around and cut money to the library in general fund dollars in the future, and not wanting to get caught in that box, really, what we promise people and being straight up. So I appreciate the response. Thanks.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for all the presentations and this information. Thank you for being so thoughtful and innovative and responsive to the community needs. Each of these packages really talks to what our community is going through, what we're going through kind of nationally when we're thinking about cuts to some of these other early childhood programs. I really appreciate the attention to detail and being able to look forward into the next 5 years. I love the innovation of these kiosks. I think it's an awesome idea. You know, it would pull me into, if it was in a park, like if it was in my local park at maybe Maury Jacobs, I would be more likely to go to the park and to the library, right? Like 2 birds, 1 stone. So I love that. I am waiting to hear more from my fellow counselors on where we're going to land. I'm not willing to go below option 2. I'm willing to go up to option 3 if there's enough support around this table. I think we all have to consider all of the different funding mechanisms that we are asking from the community in this next year. I think we have to be responsible. We have to be, you know, like you are, cognizant of what's going on around us and how much we are asking from our community financially to support our city and our operations and our general fund. But I love the idea that this is protected and that we will always, you know, for the next 5 years, be able to depend on these services to help support our community. And so I'm going to let others have their round, and we'll come back for a second round.
Thank you.
Councillor Keating remotely.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Angela, Joshua, thank you for your service and the overview. And John and Terry, thank you for the detailed presentation. I so greatly appreciate the level of detail in regard to the polling and your perspective and professionalism. This was one of, if not the best, teed up presentations to get an elected body ready for a levy that I've seen in my 12 or so years of elected service. So thank you. What I see in front of us is a good, better, best suite of options. Unfortunately, the good option is not good enough. The better option polls so well, it almost mirrors option one in its level of support as articulated by Tony, that could get across the finish line and win the day, with 7 out of 8 wards, a majority of supporters coming out strong for in the survey, coming out strong for option 2, that quote unquote better option. The best option, unfortunately, doesn't poll well, as was articulated in the presentation, and I am cautious about putting our resources and all our chips all in for an effort that doesn't get across the finish line. I think it's fiscally prudent and responsible to go for the nice even round number of $50 on an average per month or average per month per household, or average. Actually, can I have some clarification on that? It'd be a $50 annual average per household. Is that accurate?
49 annual for option 2, Councillor Keating.
Okay, thank you. I'm enthusiastic about that second option. I don't want to risk the credibility of the library or risk maintaining the services by advancing option 3. And the key point for option 2 that I trust won the day with when voters were polled, and the key that will win this May, is the critical investment in early learning. So thank you for making that investment, for increasing staff at the library. When it comes down to it, count me in as a staunch supporter, and I hope I've made it abundantly clear that I think option 2 is the best option for council to take today.
Councillor Kaczynski.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all the work that you've done with this and all the work you do in our community. It is greatly appreciated, and it's very important work in our community. You know, when we're looking about priorities and what the early part of the poll that was talking about, like where community members are seeing work being needed, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that people tend to say we need to focus on things that are broken or that aren't working well. And so I think that some of the commentary about the library not being like, oh, that's the top of the list, is because it is working so well and is providing such service to our community. I think that if we started seeing that service decline, we would hear about it. It would rise up that list pretty fast of things that we should be paying attention to. From a question standpoint, what if it doesn't pass? If we put out option 3 and it doesn't pass, what would then happen?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Kaczynski. We have a small amount of funding that would allow us to thoughtfully consider what comes next. And that includes, but that would ultimately the services that are currently funded through the levy would be ramped down. I do believe that there would potentially be another opportunity to go out for another levy. That being said, there would still be a disruption in service if it was not to pass on the May ballot.
Thank you very much. I was really, really excited about the kiosks. Like, I think that would be an amazing thing to have in our community. And I think looking at the polling, I feel like, you know, is there opportunity to do kiosks down the road someday? Like, if it, not now, maybe later? I see nodding, so I will say that.
It's not an official question, but I will say, when we built these, again, with a lot of thoughtfulness, it is our long-term strategic plan, and maybe that's 5 years from now, you see this option come back as option 2 instead of option 3, but it has legs.
So I really feel like we should be investing in our library as much as we can. I think that given the risk that if this doesn't pass, that would be a disruption, and given the very strong polling for option 2, I would be leaning towards option.
Councillor Ye.
Thank you. Thank you guys again, as everyone has said, for this process. Like the last one, you guys do an excellent job of making sure we're really well informed about the different options and your thought process behind this. I've been really impressed that I think all of these options are incredibly responsible and use the money they would be allocated in ways that are really getting a maximum amount for the dollars. I also am leaning towards option 2. I think focusing on early literacy is really smart right now in our those upstream solutions, so that we're not dealing with problems as they're coming downstream. I think that's a really smart way to use the money that we do have. And I'm really encouraged that both of the first two, well, all the options include this creation of a library systems plan. And I think that's going to give us an opportunity to have more conversations about these more innovative ideas that, some of it may be that people don't see the value, but they may also not understand exactly what we're talking about and how this resource can really benefit them and their neighbors. And the system plan will give us an opportunity to really dig in and talk about these different options and ones that we're not talking about, and then figuring out, okay, what does the future look like? And then, we can have these conversations about how do we expand our services to support our ever-growing community in the ways that it needs and deserves. So I'm very comfortable with option 2 based on all of that, but also on this polling that is very helpful. Thank you guys for doing all that work for us as well.
Thank you, Councilor Ye.
Councilors and staff, I'll just add myself to the queue, and maybe we will launch into a second round if any other councilors would like to have a second round. I first just want to say that on Monday night at the State of the City, I had the opportunity to share some of the metrics that are included in this AIS. And for people who are not following along closely at home, the 99,000 library cards that are out in our community to all of our 4J and Bethel students, including students that live outside of city limits, as well as our participating charter schools. I think that's a great example of the type of program that Councillor Ye was just speaking to in terms of the upstream engagement that we do in our community. We spend and have spent this year, I think, a lot of very important time in conversations about innovation and the ecosystem that we are trying to cultivate here in our community of opportunity and richness of opportunity. And when I think about the role that public libraries play in opening doors to education, curiosity, worlds that otherwise might not be present in people's lives, but also opportunities to begin the process of initiating a change in career or the development of a new skill or the pursuit of a new certification. These are very important supports to our larger economic development goals. And I just wanted to reiterate that because we have been talking a lot about this in different conversations in our community. And I really do believe that our library system and the return on investment that it delivers in myriad ways is a great example of a strength and of a real pride and confidence that our community has in that upriver work. I also just want to share an observation and maybe ask a question, because our polling consultants observed the die-hard support for our library systems that's present within this community. But maybe if you all could speak to this a little bit. Slide 10 speaks to 61% of the population using the library in the past year. 34% a few times, 27% monthly or more. And then on a second slide, slide 8, we have 76% of the community describing their high degree, level of satisfaction with these services. I'm just wondering if our polling team could speak a little bit to the fact that we have a significant percentage of people in our community who are speaking to their satisfaction with the system, but are not directly engaging with it frequently. Can you share a little bit about that?
Tony and John, can you go hop in?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think you don't have to use the library frequently necessarily to appreciate its benefits. I mean, there are, clearly people who use it and are satisfied, and those who use it less frequently who are aware of the benefits that it provides. And I think that's probably the best way we could explain it.
Thank you. I wanted to also open that doorway for similar insight. My conclusion, and based on my inbox, is similar. There's a lot of love for our library, but also a lot of appreciation for the jewel of our community that it is oftentimes described as. So just want to echo my support for this work, and I do think that what's described with early literacy is really important. Do you have any
If I
Please,
could just add one point, across demographic groups, there is a widespread support for various levy options. When you look at support for early childhood literacy, for example, it's not just coming from families that have kids at home. It's coming from members of the community who don't have kids at home. And so there's again, there may not be that direct experience there, but there's an understanding or an appreciation.
Thank you. Councilor Zelenka, and then Councilor Clark.
Yeah, given what the mayor was just talking about and what Eliza mentioned about it doesn't show up as a service because it's not broken because it works really well, and taking into consideration the history of polling on libraries tends to underestimate the support for libraries. We dramatically underestimated it last time. 77% was a stunningly big number. It also doesn't take into consideration the diehards working hard for this measure, and there's likely going to be no organized opposition to it. So I don't think the council needs to be constrained by the three options that are presented here. We can create our own option as well. And unfortunately, it wasn't tested, but I think the vending kiosk is a fantastic idea and would be an enhancement to option 2. So, and I don't think it costs that much. We can get that back. So I think we're going to push option 2 forward, but maybe I could either add it as an additional motion, or it could be a friendly to have staff bring back a separate additional option of just adding the vending kiosk to option 2.
Thank you for that, Councilor Zelenka. We can certainly come back with the cost of the vending kiosks as an individual item.
One thing, if I might jump in, Mayor, I did want to ask our team just to clarify. I think I was under the impression we did not poll for the last library levy. Is that our understanding?
Yeah, we did not poll for the 2020 levy. We polled for the levy prior to that. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
For a refreshing change, I want to offer a counter idea to my friend Alan. The economic realities of today, I would suggest, and of the general public, are significantly different than they were in 2020. And I believe the polling research, and every time I've ever worked on a campaign, and I have always adhered to the number mechanism that our pollsters here have recommended. As a result, I see option number 2 as adding almost $1 million a year to what we're currently getting from the levy, an additional $1 million a year. I'd support that as the ask. I would, however, caution my friends that I think we will see a general fund next year that requires maybe bringing some of that back down. So planning for that might be wise, but certainly for the additional services and the way you've talked about planning for it already, that makes sense that option 2 seems like a good idea to me. Thank you.
Counselor Evans.
I think that based on the conversation we've just had, that option 2 seems to be the way that the majority of council will go. With Alan's proposed amendment supporting the kiosk, do we have a number of what that would look like? Because right now, option 2 is at $49 as opposed to option 1, which is at $43 in terms of a tax increase. Does that push us over 50 if we add the kiosk in? And because option 3 has us at $56.
Angela, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I am going to navigate an interesting middle ground with council, which is when we built these, we knew strategically that all of them played a role in where we want to go in the future and meet the needs of what we had heard the community say. Part of that could be, if we were to rework a package or to seek additional funding, would be to do not 3 kiosks, but something more manageable. Say we started with 1 as a pilot that didn't include some of those. The reason we put 3 was we identified 3 areas where we thought we could initially have the most impact. When you get to the number of 3, it adds an additional component that makes it somebody else's almost entire job, whereas 1 does not necessarily get us to that point. And so we have had discussions that potentially we could do this as a pilot project that would build affinity for it for when we came back to you in another 5 years and this proposal moved. It would also give us a lot of really great data. So we can go back and rework the package. I would say realistically, to make the least fiscal impact on moving that number, it will move that number a little bit from option 2. But we could do it in a smaller capacity that would balance fiscal.
So with that thought, I would like to build some specificity around what Councilor Zelenka is suggesting, and that is that if we are going to do kiosk and we are going to pilot 1 kiosk, that pilot be in West Eugene, where we have no library service at now, specifically in the Churchill area. Because again, you know, I'm noting the breakdown of support by ward. I know that my ward is least supportive of the library, but there's several factors and reasons to go into that. And one of those that would impact maybe not this vote, but future votes around library support is the cost of the increase, and you factor in what we're experiencing with the inflationary spiral in food, in utilities, and in everything else. And my hat's off to our assistant city manager over here, who helped us dodge a bullet earlier in the year with our budget, and moving over into the wastewater increase instead of us having to go back out and do fee increases to the voters in general, which I think would have felt extremely flat. So if we're going to move forward, I would hope that Councilor Zelenka would specify his amendment with, you know, and ask for the kiosk to be presented in West Eugene, specifically in the Churchill area, and that as much as we can work it, if it's $49.50, close as we can keep it under 50, I think the better chances that we have of maximizing the support in the levy.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councilor Evans. We can certainly pull together a concept around how much that would cost to have a discrete kiosk in Churchill.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, my intent was to explore this, so that what we'd ask staff is to bring back information to us to be able to have more informed conversations, since they weren't prepared to do that today. So if we had staff bring back separate additional options for adding the vending kiosk service to option 2, including a kiosk in West Eugene, you could bring back various options that would something like that, so we could see what that looks like and see what the impact is.
One thing on that, Alan.
Counselor, just one
that's
moment.
right.
We have Counselor Groves and Counselor Kaczynski in the queue, but Counselor Evans, I will add you right back.
Okay.
Just one, and because we're not deciding right now, we're asking staff to bring back information. Then we will decide. So it would be that additional information.
Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilor Evans, for bringing up West Eugene, the Churchill area. I've been sitting over here kind of on my hands. I have had conversations with our staff on this issue, and I do appreciate that. I was trying not to make it about Ward 8 because this is really a citywide issue that I think is incredibly important. But I do think it's appropriate, if we're going to add a resource like that, that it does go into the Churchill area. It's the only part of town that doesn't really have a community center. It doesn't have a lot of things we don't have, including a dog park. As simple as that is. It just kind of, people are paying taxes and they aren't necessarily seeing a lot in return as much as we are in other parts of the city. So I think from an equity standpoint, that's important as well. I've been, from the beginning, leaning towards option 2 on this. I, too, agree with the comments that have been made. I know, Lindsay, you brought this up about early childhood development and how important that is. You know, the best way to build a stronger future for our community and beyond is to take care of our youth. And, you know, I think one of the most important things a society, one of the most important responsibilities a society has, and I've said this before, it's preparing the next generation. And, you know, we can avoid a lot of cost and problems down the road by adequately supporting our youth in our community, whether that's through the libraries, through recreational opportunities. It's a bunch of things. It's no one single component. But I think it's important that we have our eye on that all the time. And I don't think you have to be a parent to be an advocate for that. We're all getting older, and you know it's this next generation that's going to be helping us get through our senior years too. I'm speaking broadly when I say we, I mean the community. So yeah, I definitely am in support of option 2. I would be interested to see what the kiosk would do. I think it's important that we test that and see where we can go. I've been a fan of even the short reading in the library or the airport. I brought that up too, and I still think we need to make that center there, that machine, more prominent because it's buried where it is right now. I missed it here a while back and went back to look for it and found it finally. But it's things like that give us other opportunities to get literature and important information out to the community are things we should be looking at. And thank you very much.
Counselor Kaczynski.
Thank you. I am looking at slide 3 from the presentation, and I note that it says that February 2026 is the last day that we have to take, is the last month that we have to take action if we want it on the May ballot. Can we clarify what day in February?
It's the 9th, February 9th. Wait, I'm sorry. February 18th is the last, so, but from the meeting standpoint was. Okay. So we have a little bit of time in February, which was actually one of the things I wanted to speak to when it comes to the motions you have in front of you. They're very specific to having resolutions returned to you, but, and these are just options available. It sounds like you want to actually have a greater conversation around the kiosk, the cost of the kiosk, the kind of scalability of the kiosk option as well. So knowing that conversation can come back to you on the 28th, then the next thing that happens is based on where you want to go with that information, then a resolution comes back to you. Because writing resolutions with the resolutions will look different depending on if you decide you want to move forward with adding the kiosk option to option 2 or not. So writing various resolutions depending on all the various kiosk options becomes a little difficult. It would be nice to land where you want to land on the kiosk, then we come back with a resolution for you. Your motion options don't really envision that. It's envisioning the 28th, you have a resolution in front of you. And what I would say is maybe there's a option motion 4 for you if you in fact want to have that discussion.
So Catherine, if I can just clarify that, if council, there's a lot of interest in gathering some more information, learning about the kiosk options and scaling them, essentially to come back for another work session to discuss that, and then at that work session, give direction on a resolution.
Correct. That's what I would be proposing to do. It gets you the easiest, instead of having to wordsmith something in front of you to make sure we get you what you need based on after you've got all the information you need.
We have 60 minutes scheduled on January 28th, so that would give you time to consider that, but we would need direction then to bring back a resolution if that's where you wanted to go on that day.
Thank you. And so I think what I'll say with that is that if we can get that done, like I think the addition of the kiosk will probably not be enough to like diminish the support, particularly if it's not, $1 bazillion, which I'm doubting it'll be more than option 3. And so that I think helps get us moving in that direction while also still preserving the sort of integrity of getting the thing passed. So I would be open to that.
So a clarification as well, and depending on where you land, but if council is feeling like they'd like us to bring back that 4th option, we don't need a motion for that. We can do that if there's general support for that, to bring it back on the 28th.
Seeing general and, I would say, strong support for that continued. Oh, sorry, Councillor Keating, apologies, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm unclear how the kiosks, if at all, were pulled. And so I'd like some clarification because they were only in the option 3 of the suite of options. Where Tony or John, I think John left. Tony, could you provide some clarification if kiosks were even mentioned at all, A, and B, even if they were scalable, does that mean that this option, as Councillor Evans pointed out, would then bring, or if council were to support option 2 plus, would it bring plus any level of investment in these kiosks, would it bring it north of the $50 mark?
Tony, can you answer that first part of that question?
Yeah, as to the question, were kiosks mentioned in the survey? No. Basically the argument for option 2 was that option 3 is that it would expand the number of book pickup and drop-off locations to ensure that neighborhoods across the city enjoy convenient library services.
Okay, so it was broad in how it was framed, and yet that pulled the worst of the 3.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm as attractive as having these things would be. I want to adhere to the pulse. I want to listen to the pulse of the community. I think it is. I think we have an opportunity to send a signal where we want to be, or what we want to go, what we want to support the library, where we want to make an investment very clearly in early literacy. I've heard that around this table today. And as attractive as other add-ons may be, I don't know how responsible they are fiscally in this in this climate, in this economy. And I would have hoped to advance one of the three options. Pretty clearly, option 2 is the most support around the table. I would have hoped we would advance option 2 and then support an additional motion to explore a pilot program and what that cost might be, as I strongly suspect that it's going to change the dollar amount, which is nestled nicely under $50 right now. Any level of investment in any of those kiosks is going to bring this north of 50, which changes the equation. I think they're two separate things in front of us, and I would encourage council to consider passing what's on the table today and coming back by getting more information, but keeping those conversations parallel rather than married together.
I have Councillor Ye and Councillor Clark, and we'll just also note a time check to council that we have about 6.5 minutes remaining of this session before another session. So Councillor Ye.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I had a real quick question about how the kiosks work. They dispense materials, but can you drop them off as well? Okay, so they do drop off. And perfect. That was my big question. If you don't have both, it's not super feasible to be able to use it as your primary avenue. I want to thank Councillor Evans for what he said. I think back to my own area and using kind of the lens that he was explaining for the Churchill area, how important our Sheldon branch is to our community. For all different parts of our community, different generations, and being able to access it for your kids or for yourself as an adult, or I hear from many seniors who access the Sheldon Community Center. And you know, when I think about all that and imagine it not being there, it's really hard to imagine my part of the community being the same, right? And so when I'm thinking about these different options and I'm applying, you know, that equity lens that we talk about frequently at this table, the Churchill area really rises to the top for me. And I understand we're very sensitive to the amount, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think thinking about how much we're asking folks to contribute is extremely important. So I'm in favor of getting this option back and seeing what it looks like, but I also just wanted to share, I'm wondering if there aren't some small adjustments we might be able to make in option 2 to kind of help lower that burden. So I know that there's money going into youth collections, and that's very important, but I also think that this idea of bringing services to Churchill is very important. And I know readjusting the plans at this point is very difficult, but maybe there's a little small shift that we can make to kind of be sensitive to these competing considerations that are both important, right?
I think that, thank you very much for that, Councillor Ye. I think that if we have a little bit of time, we can try to come up with different, essentially like balances that could potentially support both the majority of option 2, along with a pilot kiosk somewhere in Churchill. We don't have the numbers in front of us on how much it would actually cost to add an additional kiosk. And of course, we always want to be cognizant of the impact on staff. So all of these concepts did incorporate that. I think that we can come up with some ideas and bring it back to y'all. So thank you for that, Councillor Ye.
So for this last round, we're going to need to shift to 1 minute to wrap up our meeting on time. Councillor Clark, and then Councillor Zelenka, and then Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Keating's rationale. And so my question is to Council President, do you intend to put a motion on the table?
No, not at this time.
I have a fuller explanation for this that I'd be happy to make after doing so, but I would move that we pass option number 2. And if I have a second, I'll speak further to that.
Second.
Thank you. I would say that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I saw enough emails to note that there's an awful lot of people who are waiting for us to act on this. And I think that the further discussion is a good one, but I want to say, hey, we advanced motion number 2, and we're definitely doing that. And we have time at a future meeting to look at, maybe we add to it once we know more of the details. But at least we came out of here today and said, option 2 is going to go to the ballot. So we want to at least do that. And that would be my motion.
So we have a motion and a second. And now council discussion to that motion. Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, well, the motion is to bring back a resolution. So I think option 2 is going to move forward, but it's the clarity around the kiosk that's going to screw up the resolution. So if we can, I don't think that, I think we're going to move forward with 2. Everybody around the table said that. So I think that message is really clear. It's around the kiosk and what the options are and what it does to it. So if we have 1, 2, or 3, where they are, how that works, what does it add to it, then we can have the resolution. You're actually asking the staff to do more work by coming up with a resolution now. And as to a pilot still costs money. And if you want it to be a pilot that goes on for more than a one-time funding, which I don't know where you'd come up with one-time funding for it, we would have already done it if we could, then it has to be included in the levy anyway. So, and then we'd be back to where we are right now, which is asking for more information about what the kiosk programs would look like.
Any other discussion from council of this motion? I will say I agree with Councilor Zelenka's summary in that I think we have support broadly for option 2, but we're trying to do this as an efficient of a process administratively as possible. Councilor Evans and then Councilor Clark.
Yeah, the only reason why I would say not moving this now is because we have at least a few more days before we can have a total package put together before the end of the month that would be incorporated, the suggestions that we talked about at this table, into a resolution that would be more comprehensive at that time and still give us time to put this out and put it on the ballot.
I should have been clearer with my motion, Mayor. I didn't intend to direct staff to create the motion, but that we want to proceed with option number 2, just so that we have that out in the public sphere.
Catherine, do you want to speak to clarify again? Because I think there is a question about the work that's happening, but the development of the resolution is specific detailed work, and wordsmithing that is complicated.
Yeah, and I think Councilor Clark, what I hear you saying is you just want a motion of intent out of the council. You're not, so the motions you're not making motion number 2 on the AIS. So I think it's actually a whole different animal. It is this is the intent of council to move forward with option 2 and potentially other changes, right? And potentially additions. I think so. It's really it's no direction to council at all based on what his motion is.
It's not specific staff direction.
It's not direction to return with a resolution.
Could you clarify the motion, Councilor?
I move to express the will of the council for option number 2 and a further discussion upon staff's return to us with what some of those other detailed choices may be.
Thank you. Councilor
final
Keating, you
resolution.
seconded that motion. I'm assuming you agree with that clarification.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Any other discussion of this motion? Then I will now take a vote, and all in favor, councilors, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
we were going to do. So.
Aye.
6, 7,
Aye.
8. Thank you, and the motion passes by a vote of 8-0. We will return to follow up on the council's intention to support option 2 with additional information. Thank you all very much. That concludes our agenda for today, and I now close the January 14th City Council work session. We are adjourned.
Thank you very much for your time today.